What does it mean when my practitioner says my spleen qi is weak? What does that mean? Hi, I'm Marie Hopkinson. Welcome back to the Chinese Medicine Podcast. And on today's episode, I thought we would talk about spleen qi and what that means in Chinese medicine. So you might have had that diagnosis, spleen qi deficiency, or your practitioner's felt your pulse, or they've said to you from the diagnosis that your spleen's weak. That's a very common Chinese medicine or traditional Chinese medicine diagnosis. So what does that mean? And very quickly, we need to understand, one is when we say any organ in Chinese medicine, spleen, liver, kidney, lung, that kind of stuff, it doesn't just mean that individual organ. It really, what it refers to is a system of, an intermingled system of how our body works in a different way. So what does the spleen mean? And this is something where, like your lung in Chinese medicine would be not so far from the real or the physical lung, let's say the Western medicine idea of the lung. Not too far away from that. There are some other things that we would put with all these organs that are like mental, emotional functions and things like that. But your spleen is really different to what your spleen does in Western medicine. So in a Western medicine sense, in a biological sense, like what our physical body does, there's lots of processes and functional systems that are going on in the body. And rather than having all a different naming system for all these functional systems, like Chinese medicine puts it, like basically all of those things can be encompassed within these 12 organs or 12 organ systems, if you like. So the spleen is one of those organs. Now, the first thing to think of is it's a yin organ, not a yang organ. And yin organs in Chinese medicine are solid organs, or they don't deal with the waste products or the digestive processes. Specifically, like your stomach, for instance, is the paired organ with the spleen. And that, with the spleen, does the jobs of digestion. But the spleen itself doesn't actually receive the food. The stomach is what receives the food. So where does the spleen come in? Like, because you might have watched other videos that I've done about digestion, and you might say, well, Marie, you said the spleen does digestion. The spleen digests the food. It transforms and transports the food and fluids. Yes, it does do that. But what aspect it takes on of that is more of a that the functional approach of actually doing, like providing the nutrients to the rest of the body from what we get from the foods. And so supporting the functions, like hormonal functions that are done in the body, would be attributed to between the spleen, liver. And this is where it gets a little bit tricky in Chinese medicine, that you can't sometimes, like, so for instance, I have patients might come in and say, well, I've got a hormone problem. I need, can you give me some acupuncture for my hormones? It's not like, oh, the spleen governs all of the hormones. The hormonal functions that the spleen governs may also be governed by the wood aspect of the liver, or the blood aspect of liver, or other things. The kidney in TCM does a lot of these kind of functions as well. So rather than getting too bogged down on it, what does the spleen do? That's the title of this video. And just really helping you understand that diagnosis of what is spleen qi deficiency, or what is spleen, what does it mean when my practitioner says my spleen qi is weak? What does that mean? Primarily, the main things the spleen does is transforming and transporting food and fluids. So anything to do with the digestive processes of what happens after you eat the food and what nutrients your body needs from that food would be a spleen function, or a spleen's involved in that. This separation of the pure and impure happens from within the stomach, and then as the food goes further down into your body. So it happens all the way through. So what does the spleen do? Well, it transforms and transports that food and fluids. And so food is one aspect, but fluids is another aspect as well. So fluids is something where you might have edema, like fluids overflowing, fluids not being transformed properly means that they could be accumulating in your body. So swelling, things where your body swells up, where you get puffy, where things come and go in the swelling, that kind of stuff, couldn't be a fluid transformation issue. So this is something that your Chinese medicine practitioner would work out with you. So let's say a patient comes in and they say, oh, I'm having problems with fluid metabolism. How would a practitioner approach that? Will they be looking at, is there a dysfunction with the spleen qi? Is the spleen energy not working well? And then looking at if there's a problem there, or it might be something to do with the water metabolism aspect of the actual water element itself, which is the kidney and the bladder. So There might be some aspects where the person, like, for instance, like, well, you might have seen some videos on this channel about dampness. And what is dampness? Dampness is an inability of the spleen to digest what you're putting in it. So either the food you're eating is just so dampening, which means it bogs down and it slows down the workings of that machine, which is the spleen and stomach, or like that metabolism aspect of our body. Sometimes we just eat too much crappy foods that are hard to digest, or our spleen just simply gets weak and it can't. Now, it could happen because we've bombarded it with all this stuff, or it could happen because of some other issue. Now, what other issues could happen? So if you have had blood loss, or you've had a baby, if you're under a huge amount of stress where you've had really bad sleep for a long time or something like that, that could cause you what in Chinese medicine we call a blood deficiency. So if blood becomes deficient, then your spleen also may become deficient as well. And so one of its other functions is storing blood, making blood, I should say. So when we talk about blood, and there's another video I've got on this channel about what's blood deficiency, the liver stores the blood, the heart governs the blood, and the spleen makes the blood. So what does that mean? It means that the spleen's involved in the production of blood, for one. So as a person, having treatment with a practitioner, that's pretty much all you need to kind of know about it. It's not like your practitioner is going to be able to understand that fully, and they would look at, okay, why. So with a blood deficiency, there could be reasons where there can be issues where you've lost blood, and that's just a one-off thing. So, for instance, you've had a massive accident, you've had a big surgery, or you've had a period of time for a female where you've had a lot of heavy periods, or like what I said before about having a baby or something like that. And so that's consumed a lot of blood products in your body and consumed a lot of blood, and you've lost that blood. That's a different issue to someone who's continuously, ongoingly losing blood or not able to produce the quality of blood that their body needs. So ongoingly losing blood would be someone that has really heavy periods all the time, or has a uterus bleeding problem. So their body can't stop, the periods can't stop. So that can happen sometimes. So a normal cycle. We might do a video about what's a normal cycle and your menstrual cycle in Chinese medicine on this channel as well. But these are all really important issues to kind of understand in terms of the cause of the problem. So practitioners don't want you coming in forever. They don't want you to continuously need to have treatment. If we can look at what the cause of the problem is, then you won't need to have treatment. So that can be a big issue in whether someone needs a lot of treatments or someone just needs a couple of treatments, or a few weeks of herbs versus months and months of herbs. What you do to your body in terms of lifestyle, that's diet, exercise, rest and relaxation, that kind of stuff. What you're doing to your body. Have you got the right amount of stimulation, like as in you've got the right amount of mental stimulation and all that stuff, mental health aspects. Those things make a big difference in terms of like helping our body stay healthy. I don't want that to turn off. In terms of helping our body stay healthy. And then like regaining its health. So where a practitioner may be able to help you in this instance is helping you get a bit, basically regaining some of that health, so that then your body can produce better quality blood, it can sleep better. So this would be the main aspects, is diet and sleep. If you can get those things working well, then your body has more of a resource to kind of help itself get better. So the spleen's main job is transforming and transporting food and fluids. The second one that it does is it makes blood. So it's involved in the production of blood. And so it's probably more relating to the diet aspect of how your body gets blood. Your liver has more of a job in terms of, or the wood aspect of the body has more of a job in terms of regulating your menstrual cycle if you're a female, and to help with your sleep. That's more your heart blood. But at the end of the day, blood is blood. So your body makes blood by its regenerative processes, sleeping. So having good quality sleep helps your body to regenerate and produce quality blood, but it has to have something to make that blood out of. And so that's where your diet comes in. And that's also where your spleen comes in. So if your spleen qi, or your function of your spleen, or your practitioner said your spleen's weak, or your spleen's not functioning properly, or you have a yang deficiency, just in a general sense, like you just have a general yang deficiency. It means a functional deficiency. Your body can't produce what it needs to produce, and so therefore it just struggles to do its normal things. So sometimes I see patients that need herbs for a certain amount of time, and that kind of gives them this boost to help their body get along, get back on track with what it needs to do. If I had a patient and they had these kind of symptoms, and that one of their issues was extreme bleeding or menstrual bleeding that was out of control, then that would be the first thing to treat, because we want to stop that so that then it's not like you're just continuously losing blood, because that would be a big priority in making sure that your body stays healthy. There's no point in putting more substance in if it's just being sort of lost out through the bottom end too quickly, that kind of thing. Same as if you had diarrhea is a big thing in Chinese medicine. Like if you have a spleen qi deficiency, let's say, a common symptom of that is loose stools. And when you have yang deficiency, your stools can become very much more looser or unformed. And actually, like the looser or the more diarrhea you have, the more fluids your body's losing. And that's a sign, again, of the spleen not transforming the water. So too much water's going out of your body and not going where it needs to be. And so you might have loose bowel movements, but you also might have dryness somewhere else. And again, with the fluid metabolism, sometimes people can have too much fluid in one place, like edema, which is puffiness in the body, fluid building up in their, let's say their arms are getting puffy or their legs are getting puffy or something like that. Or even their face. The face can get rounded and puffy. And yet they feel very thirsty, or they feel very dry, or their skin's dry or something like that. And so that's a sign that, okay, your body has fluid in it because it's got too much fluid in certain places, but it's not being able to purpose that correctly. It's not transforming it properly. It's not being able to excrete it correctly. And so these are all symptoms and questions that your practitioner will ask you, like, how about your urination? Has that changed? Are you urinating too much or not enough? If you've got fluid metabolism problems. So these are the big things that the spleen's in charge of. And then the third thing that I thought I would mention is there are a few other things that it does. If you're a TCM student, you can you can put your comments below as well. Otherwise, I don't want to make this a long-winded video. This is a quick one today. But the third one that I wanted to mention that spleen does is in a mental health aspect. It's in charge of worrying, or in charge of worrying. It's in charge of thinking. So clear thought, the yi, or the intellect, is part of the spleen. So a person that can articulate well, that means they can get a conversation out of their mouth. They can actually they can get their thoughts out in a clear way. Or you might be good at, it might necessarily be verbally, it could be writing it out on paper, or being able to express your opinion in a way that like other people can understand it. That is part of the intellect. And also part of the intellect, or the yi, is studying. So being able to commit things to memory, or actually understanding a concept, understanding difficult concepts. People that are very good at that would have a strong yi or yi element, aspect of their body. So in Chinese medicine, we have this saying, like, the spleen qi digests thoughts, but it also digests our actual food. So that food digestion of separating pure and impure, we also have to digest the information that we receive on a daily basis. And part of that is when we come to worry, is like an imbalance of that, or the overthinking. In Chinese medicine, they call it pensiveness. And that's something really interesting to kind of look at. So when you see people that they get, like, I mean, nowadays, one issue we have is we have so much information. We're bombarded by information. There's hardly any filter. Like before you had social media and you had news, there would be some filter. Now, whether you think that's good or bad, or you like it or hate it, it was there. And so some kind of organisation, or some greater good, or some organisation for their own purpose, for making money or whatever, news organisations or journalists would filter that information and give us what information they felt we could handle, or they would filter it in such a way, and that kind of thing, and disseminate that information out. Now information can just be, every person has a blog or a Facebook page or whatever, and information can be disseminated out very quickly. It can be completely untruthful, and it can be very hard to determine from face value whether that information is truthful or not. It's very easy for people to be deceptive in that medium, make things look like, well, that's how we got coined the term fake news, right? So it can be, even to the trained person, they can think, well, that looks legitimate. And then you've got the other extreme of the spectrum where people who have, maybe they don't have a very high intellect, or they don't really care, or they don't feel any ethical concern for sharing this information. And what I'm getting at is we're bombarded by information. And so that in itself overwhelms our spleen. So when you wake up in the morning, the first thing you do, you scroll through your phone, and you're looking at all this information. What is that doing to our body? What is that doing to our digestion? What's that doing to our earth element? Is that good for us? Is that what we should be doing? Is that the best time of the day for you to be scrolling through Facebook and Instagram and all these things like that? Especially digesting the news and getting all that information. I'm not saying don't get it, but it's just something to consider, something to think about. And also interestingly, I guess, in a correlation sense, your digestive organs and that energy is the most active first thing in the morning. So when you wake up, it should be a time of this is one reason why you should have breakfast. And if you haven't eaten very late at night and you've been good with your diet in that way, then you will wake up feeling hungry and you'll feel like, yeah, I want to eat something. Are you firstly putting thoughts in your mind that are negative, destructive, difficult to digest, hurtful things, it's hard for you to keep your social media away from that stuff because it's just full of people and people have opinions and comments. And also there's advertisements and there's things like that there. So it's just something to consider and think about. And so the extreme of the spleen being one of its functions is E, or intellect, thinking, digesting thoughts, committing things to memory. So if you're a student, you want to be thinking about your spleen energy. That's very important as a student, or someone that's committing to a life of study or your scholarly study, things like that. How you treat your spleen is really going to help you having a good quality ability to study, good quality ability to not so much committing things to memory requires different other aspects of our body as well. But it's that mulling through of information, that discerning of information is the intellect and the yi. And then the other side of that is the worry. So the worry aspect is where it's normal to worry. Some things it's normal to worry about, but there's some things where it's not normal to worry about that exact thing, that kind of thing, or it's pathological to worry all the time. Worry about things you can't control, to worry about, in extreme forms of disharmony in this area would be things like obsessive compulsive disorder, where a person's thoughts are bombarded, constantly there's particular thoughts and things that they feel that they have to do, or rituals that they have to do in order to make sure that certain things don't happen. Bad negative things or bad things will happen if they don't have a particular pattern of thinking, or they don't do a particular ritual or something like that. That would be that's extreme disharmony in that spleen or earth element. So I hope this has been useful and helpful to you to understand the spleen. The three things we talked about today, the spleen doing was transforming food and fluids. Secondly, it's storing of blood. And thirdly, the yi, or the intellect, and our ability to think through things, think through problems, and then also the negative or the pathological aspect of that in the worry or the anxiety and the pensiveness. So if this has been useful and helpful and you'd like to learn more about Chinese medicine, then make sure you subscribe to the channel. We love hearing people's comments, and I like to answer them here. So if you've got a question or a comment, or you've got something you'd like to know about, how does Chinese medicine think about this thing, Marie, please put that in the comments below, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video soon.